So I'd like to thank the Iona Institute for setting up this conference. I think it's addressing an important topic, and the question posed to us this morning, or this evening in my case, is, are Catholic schools worth keeping in Northern Ireland? I would like to run through 12 brief points in answer to the question. 1, pluralism. The existence of Catholic schools enriches our society and its pluralism, not only through a distinct educational offer which transcends narrow parochial and national differences, but their very existence says something about the openness of society and its distinction from the state. They are one of the bodies which helps the overall checks and balances within a society to ensure that state power does not simply subsume societal freedoms. So their very existence says something about our openness to difference and the right to be different, and therefore the contribution they make to our liberal democratic order. The humanist philosopher Jürgen Habermas is alive to that when he writes, "It is in the interests of the constitutional state to deal carefully with all the cultural sources that nourish its citizens." 2, multicultural. Our approach to Catholic schools is a product of a rather unique historical context and a philosophical tradition born out of that context, where we tried and failed in these islands over many centuries to suppress and wipe out religious difference. In this case, in the case of the United Kingdom, Catholicism. What we have today is a healthy inclusion of difference, and the existence of Catholic schools, and state-funded ones at that, tell us something deeper about our society and the role of the state vis-a-vis the individual and non-state organizations. 3, social inclusion. Catholic schools are successful in providing an education and formation to a wide group of people in society who would otherwise not have the same chances. And I would include myself in that category as a graduate of Catholic schools in Northern Ireland. Those schools ensure that an excellent education can be provided to all, regardless of social or economic background or the income of your parents. 4, broad over narrow. The philosophy underpinning Catholic education does not reduce education to narrow utilitarian ends alone. It focuses on the broader aspects to form good social beings. It reminds us of the bigger picture and the handing on of wisdom, which is more than the individual subjects studied or skills acquired. It commits to a breadth of knowledge, and its unity of knowledge is in the Newman tradition rather than in the more narrow technical focus, which you sometimes get in contemporary education. 5, global and local. It's a tradition of education which is tried and tested over the centuries. The West's oldest universities grew out of the church, and to this day, the Catholic Church is the world's largest transnational provider of primary, secondary, and tertiary education. Each day, well over 60 million students attend Catholic schools across the world, without that being a cause of sectarian tension. Each of those schools shares in something bigger than the single school, single nationality, or citizenship. They share a larger history and tradition. They share an approach to education that is the oldest tradition in the Western world and one of the oldest across the world, especially if one appreciates the Hellenic influence in early Christianity. 6, Catholic schools overcoming sectarianism, not fueling it. Catholic schools, despite the impressive results, are not without their critics, and that is a growing voice, especially on the island of Ireland. There are those who would deny their very right to exist, especially to enjoy state subsidy or subvention. Some might have us believe that Catholic schools foster mistrust or hatred. They could, but often such sentiments don't come from the school, but from the home or wider society. And there is no body of evidence that I am aware of which shows that graduates of Catholic schools are more prone to negative behaviours. Professor Duncan Morrow's report on Scotland's Catholic schools showed that they did not cause sectarianism. Across many Catholic and Anglican schools, for example, in England, it is noticeable that they have significant numbers of students coming from other faith communities because of the very values and ethos enshrined in the Catholic and Anglican schools. I witnessed that experience many times across Pakistan, where many of the Catholic schools had a majority of Muslim students and provided a space for minorities to meet and integrate. And indeed, in St. Patrick's High School in Karachi, one photograph summed it up. It's a photo of one of the founders of the Indian BJP party with the former president of Pakistan, President Musharraf. The photograph was taken when they were both students at the Catholic school. 7, spaces of integration, not segregation. Some also claim that Catholic schools are not representative of wider society and tend to serve privilege. The most recent statistics for the Catholic schools, for example, in England, show the following. Catholic schools are more ethnically diverse than the national average. They take more students from deprived areas. They have a higher number of Ofsted-ranked good or outstanding schools, and students score higher in GCSEs and SATs than the national average. 18.7% of pupils at Catholic primary school come from the lowest 10% of income sector of society, compared to a national average of 13.9%. At secondary school, again, the Catholic sector is a similar pattern, with 17.4% coming from the lowest income bracket compared to 11.8% nationally. I suspect the figures in Northern Ireland are similar. 8, ethnic and cultural diversity. We are often told that faith schools are ghettos which undermine cohesion in society by separating people on religious difference. Between the Catholic Church and Church of England alone, they provide close to a quarter of all schools provision in England. And far from being ghettos, nearly 40% of pupils in Catholic primary schools are from ethnic minority backgrounds, compared to a national average of 27%. In Catholic secondary schools, nearly 35% of students come from ethnic minority backgrounds. Catholic schools in England have over 30% of students coming from a non-Catholic background, and over 45% of teachers in Catholic schools are not from a Catholic background. Catholic schools are part of the widest network of education found anywhere in the world and make a rich contribution to the society, not only in the local contexts, but also in the global context. So faith schools can hardly be described as ghettos. 9, beyond the results. The success of Catholic schools in this society can easily be measured by utility, league tables, and exam results, but they are simply manifestations of deeper, more profound success. For most of us going through Catholic schools, we were likely to be the first in our families to go to university. I was the first in my family to complete secondary school. My parents had just missed out on the 1944 Education Act. I might have gone to university even if I hadn't attended a Catholic school, but I'm not sure on that front that the odds stack up. When I speak of the ecology of the Catholic school, I'm referring to something I experienced, something I lived, a place that showed a human concern and a care beyond the academic, and in perhaps at that time, some of the most testing and trying circumstances our society faced in recent decades. 10, empowering lives. I am a beneficiary of that Catholic school ecology. I believe strongly that if it had not been for the engagement of teachers, lay and clerical, then it is highly unlikely, in fact, most certainly so, that I would not have returned to study for A-levels, nor would I have applied for or attended university. The pastoral interest, care and concern shown by those teachers changed a life. They did not only educate, they gave a confidence to a young person who had decided that finishing school was not for them, that university was not for them. While it might now be unfashionable in some quarters to give credit to Catholic schools and those within them who helped transform lives and as a result societies, I don't really care today about being fashionable. I just recall what happened and the effect it had on my life. So this question you pose can never just be academic for someone like me. It's also personal. 11, holding the line during the Troubles. The personal experience, though, does not stop at the prospect of a university education. I look back on my years in Catholic schools in Northern Ireland, and I thank God for those who taught in those schools at that time and who gave witness to the faith in quite challenging circumstances. That philosophy of education, which I opened with, the practical, that I addressed at the part of this talk, all flowed into the personal. The philosophy of education that characterizes a Catholic school kept Northern Ireland open to the world, even in the darkest days. It reminded us bravely of something beyond the immediate. It stood for the vision of the human person in a broader Christian anthropology in the face of violence and adversity. 12, good intentions but wrong solution. Finally, my experience of the 70s and 80s contrasts with what I often hear increasingly in London and also now in Ireland about the negative effects of Catholic schools in Northern Ireland. Lazy and sometimes prejudicial arguments are trotted out, which infer blame on Catholic education for contributing to the Troubles and sectarianism and division. Yet those holding such views often do so with a rather different social and economic trajectory than those of us whose lives were positively changed by Catholic education. While they try to solve sectarianism, they often settle for the simplest of solutions, which might appear appealing at first sight. They often use loaded words and terms such as segregated, while still trying to offer an open and independent perspective. To be clear, there is no body of evidence which supports the view that Catholic schools breed or bred hatred or sectarianism. Those advocating such a theory offer no evidence and seem to want to offer a convenient and simple solution to addressing a set of complex symptoms. In policy making, the biggest mistake one can make is to confuse the symptom and the cause. The reason such positions are dangerous is that they do not reflect the reality that many others and I experienced during the Troubles. I went to schools on the border on both sides, and I don't know of anyone who was radicalized by what they were taught in a Catholic school. I do, however, know many who were prevented from being radicalized by their education in Catholic schools. Many were challenged to think morally and to act courageously, and the Church never flinched from its transmission of a strong moral code regarding its teaching on the taking of human life and protecting human dignity. That message was delivered within the community and also to the power of the state, a state that I went on to serve and represent abroad. To take such a stand in those days has, for me, proved a powerful example of Catholic education. My experience in a Catholic school in Northern Ireland is where I first appreciated the wider context, the dignity of the human being, and that beyond this geographical space, faith spoke to a different part of one's identity. That education was not narrow, nor shrill, nor closed, but open and challenging. And I have no doubt opened my mind to roles and possibilities that I could never have imagined as a child growing up. Everything I've seen as a diplomat and academic across these past 30 years, living in 7 countries, tells me the answer to the question you have posed is that it's a no-brainer. Of course they are worth keeping. You should in fact have more of them, and the other faith traditions should have more of them also, so that more children's lives can be transformed and given potential. A rich plurality of school choices and options will not only help children be part of something wider and give them greater potential, it will also help society's overall health and help to give it a rich context within which ecumenism can have a better hold, and also to reduce sectarian tensions. Thank you.